What keeps you awake at night?
Sea levels are rising globally.
Fears fueled by horror stories.
Among the worst flu season in a decade, and it hasn't peaked yet.
We all know the atomic bomb is very dangerous.
Another series of deadly terror attacks.
I don't want to be blamed if you cannot get to sleep tonight.
Da 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 da.
Let's start this podcast. This is Things That Keep Me Up at Night. I'm Olivia.
I'm Brooke.
I'm Brianna.
And that is someone over there. What is happening?
What?
Brianna!
No, this is not happening.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ. And that's Brianna.
You can hear me, right? I swear to God.
Yeah.
Why am I a 90-year-old woman trapped in a 19-year-old's body? I swear to God, this never happens.
Right.
Context,
so this is Things That Keep Me Up at Night.
We've been trying to get Brianna on this call for 12 minutes.
It's okay, we got it.
We're totally good.
The premise of this podcast is we talk about things that keep us up at night. Shocker. Shock that's what the content is.
I wouldn't have gotten
That's
that from the title of the podcast, Olivia.
Yeah, it was one of the first ideas we came up with in the boardroom. So
Just took the first thing that was pitched. We're like,
yeah.
Things that keep me up at night. Yes, Paul. Yes,
Yeah.
that.
Yes. Did somebody write that the fuck down?
Genius.
Put it on the board.
Take
Put it
these
on
geese,
the
go to
fucking
my
board.
house and fuck my wife.
This is what I need to hear. Oh, God.
So generally what we're gonna be doing on this podcast is one of us picks a topic under an umbrella. Our content for the next 3 episodes is groupthink, and then we share the idea with the other people who don't know what the topic is. That's generally what we're gonna do.
Because suffering is done better in groups.
Of course, and I love the shock factor of you finding out about a giant unheard of genocide. This time specifically, they already know what the content is, but that's growing pains. We just fucked up the recording.
I just want to say that we're just going to put this out
at
here.
this point.
We're going to put this
I'm
out
just
here.
saying.
I've had trouble with technology for the majority of my life. I still don't understand how this magical box works, but I am trying my goddamn best. So let's say I mess up an hour and a half of recording footage. That's not... I feel like it's a learning curve.
All win them,
It's a learning curve. Learning curve for sure. Also, by magic box, did you mean headphones, Brie?
I meant a computer, but
all the same, honestly.
All the things that have electricity running through them.
I recently got a Twitter, though, and that's absolutely exciting.
I'm very proud of you.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Big
steps.
I got
Big
one
step.
retweet the other day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so proud. That's
It was
awesome.
it was on my tweet that was talking about how I waited outside of a KFC 10 minutes before they opened, and the man who served me at KFC commented on the fact he saw me waiting in the parking lot.
Okay.
I really love this podcast, and I'm so excited to dive into the topic for today.
All right.
And we're
Let's get
back.
right into it.
Perfect.
Okay, overarching topic, groupthink. My topic, massive genocide in China. So, let's get right into the news. Ooh, that hurt. That hurt a little bit on the way out. So, just to give a little background on what we're going to talk today. I could literally do an entire fucking podcast on the Chinese revolution itself. But I don't want to do that, and I didn't have the emotional capacity to read that many Wikipedia articles. If I'm going to be honest, if you can't read the Wikipedia article, you can't report on it.
Yeah.
So we're just going to do a little bit of bite-sized Chinese history. I want to qualify this. I'm not a historian.
Yeah.
So if this
Right,
is
none
not
of us
the
are.
best, might be.
Yeah, let's just cover our asses now.
Yeah, no, going
Also,
into this
is gonna
podcast...
There's going to be a lot of humor in this, and if you think that humor and genocide don't belong in one place,
That's
probably
fair.
not the place for you.
Well, no,
Let's
it's a
shake
fair...
hands.
it's a fair normal people thing, right? But unfortunately, we use humor to get through the dark stuff. I feel like a lot of people do that, but sometimes we take it to an edgy point, and I feel like that edginess isn't really fit a lot of people's, type of humor. But also, that being said, we don't know a lot about a lot of things. I don't know a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about anything.
We will do our darndest to research.
Oh,
yes.
We're going to do our best. So, let's begin at the Revolution of 1911.
Long time ago.
So, the Revolution of 1911 led to the overthrow of the Qing dynasty, which had been long criticized for rampant corruption, excessive taxation, unfair treatment of the lower class. And this was accomplished by the Nationalist Party, which was called the Kuomintang. And they succeeded in establishing the Republic of China on January 1st, 1912, with promises of fair legislation, democracy, equal representation, yada, yada, yada. Everything that America did first, but in 1912.
Wow, oh my God.
Throwing it out there. Just throwing it out
shit.
there.
Not saying they're better, not saying we're worse.
As you can tell, we are Americans.
So previous to the Republic of China, peasants were being neglected. There was a really rigid class system and general cultural norms. Like when you think of China, when you think of aristocratic China, this is what was happening during that time period. The foot binding, your marrying off of your daughters determines your title. Your actions reflecting the social status of your entire family, everything like that was happening during that time period. So, eventually people got really fed up with that really rigid structure. And the appeal of this new government is that everybody would be equal, or so they say, as everyone's first time around democracy is not streamlined.
Sure.
This began with a philosopher, Sun Yat-sen, and he's considered the father of Chinese nationalism. In fact, the Kuomintang Party was built upon many of his ideological principles of nationalism, democracy, equality, yada, yada, yada. Things were going well. Promises of a new constitution, Senate system, things that had literally never been seen before in China, because at this point it's been imperialist China back and forth between sects. But things are better left said than done, it seems, in my message here and all my research. So we're already getting into the names. I also want to say, by the way, just as a qualifier, everything here is not pronounced how it's spelled. So the Qing dynasty is Qing. And that's just like a really good example of how there's a fuck ton of consonants in these names and not a lot of vowels.
Yeah.
So
what we're saying is that we're gonna struggle our way through the pronunciations.
Have mercy, please.
We're gonna have a lot of trouble with Yuan Shikai. He was appointed the tentative leader of this loosely established republic, with Sun Yat-sen and Huang Xing as the party chairman and deputy, respectively. So things didn't go well, and there's a small revolution in 1913 to overthrow Yuan, as he repeatedly denied attempts to check his power, causing the original party leaders to flee or be exiled to different countries. Generally not a good sign.
No.
And as you're going to find, this is really common in a lot of Chinese leadership. This guy decided to declare himself emperor.
What a weird trend.
Nice.
Yeah, it's gonna get a little more dictatory, because in
baller.
1915 he declared himself emperor. The Kuomintang turned to the support of Russian communists under his rule, because they wanted to help consolidate their power, organize a more organized political system. And Mikhail Borodin arrives from Soviet Russia to help reconstruct the Kuomintang government, similar to the Soviets' model of government.
Makes sense.
They encourage members of the Communist Party of China or the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, to support the Kuomintang. So the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, was actually a separate sect under the Kuomintang, and so they're trying to convince the CCP to support the KMT, which is the Kuomintang.
All right.
Important. That is an important note to add historically.
Keep that sticky note in my brain.
Yeah, put it in there. Put a little pin in it. Remember that note, because this seems really dense, but it's all important. I promise.
Great.
So in 1926, Chiang Kai-shek took control of the Republic of China and decides that the best way to take control of China is to become the dictator of China. So now he's the boss of everyone.
I love that though. I mean, I don't obviously. Clearly, I think dictatorship is awful, but I just like I love how the general like theme in this is, no, I'm in power now. You know, like the childish tantrum of, but I want to be in charge.
I'm the line leader this week, please. Thank you.
You know, I love too that it starts at like one guy's like, okay guys, you know what? I feel like the best way to streamline this is I'm gonna be the emperor. Are we all cool with that? And then the next guy's like, yeah, what a fucking moron. Can you believe that? I'm dictator though, which is kind of a bit more intense.
No, but it's
like it's one of those like
new.
you know, one-upping him a teeny bit.
What an idiot this guy. Divine power over the whole country. Anyway, if anyone questions me, I'm killing their ass. Jesus Christ.
God, let's see. So there's a lot of in-between. Between 1926 and 1946. I'm just not interested in war history.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
what
you
it
would
can
just
be
say 20
summarized
years.
as is there's a full-scale civil war
Oh,
that
boy.
I'm distilling into a sentence between the Kuomintang and the CCP. So America, of course, has to get involved.
Right.
America
Naturally.
backed the Kuomintang, which is the nationalist group, and Soviet Russia backed the CCP.
Go figure.
Because they have unresolved issues that they're going to work out in another country's civil war.
As you do.
As you do.
Sure.
Yes. Jinx. Spoiler alert, communism wins. America's not really happy.
America's never happy.
America, never. Seriously, we fucked so many countries up, and like, how many times have we won? Not many.
USA.
Nope.
USA. Oh, is this not?
That's not what this is.
Oh,
okay.
shit. I mean, yeah.
Shit.
Fuck them. Fuck them.
Fuck America, right?
Let's see. Scrolling through a lot of paragraphs because I did learn my lesson from last time. It did not use the indent button.
This is just one solid block of text, huh? She did that,
Bet your
folks.
asses. I'm not the English major. I'm not the one that's responsible for making this read well.
Fair enough.
Oh wow!
This is just a lot of information on one page.
Just
you
some
would
words.
be very
Are we-
sad if you read what I have written down.
I don't want to be your
so
editor.
I just like how I have a visual of Olivia frantically just typing in her bed one block of text
In a cold sweat.
just about
God.
just about China.
So many people died.
Her boyfriend leans over. Hey babe, no, not now. I'm in the middle of something.
Oh, can you turn off the light, hon? No, we can't. I gotta type this right now. So much.
Can
so
we
much
rewind
death.
history and make China not happen? I didn't think so.
Yeah, that sounds
China
very-
not happen.
it's a pretty accurate depiction.
Well,
of
know what I mean.
happened. So to a degree, CCP did help the poor in the rural areas
Good for
because
them.
everything they'd been promised during the KMT's regime had not been delivered. And it was just a gross abuse of power. It's just different people in power. So October 1st, 1949, the People's Republic of China was born. And ends our first page, licks finger and flips page. So,
On your computer?
What's the font size? What is the font size you use?
that would be 11 Arial.
Oh dear.
Shut the fuck up.
Wait.
How many pages
Single
did you
or
write?
double spaced?
Single space.
Fuck off, Olivia.
Listen, we
need to stop
pages,
this now.
okay?
All right.
So,
And that's with skipping over 20
let's get
years.
into our
Jesus.
introductions. So really the only two people I need to introduce are Madame Mao and Mao. So starting with Mao, he was born December 26, 1893.
It was Sagittarius.
Damn it. Is that actually, because I have no idea, I could not correct
or
you.
it's either that or it's Capricorn. I don't know.
It's Capricorn.
I have no idea what.
I believe. Oh fuck! Now I gotta look it up. Hold on. Let me
boy.
fact check.
Yeah,
None of
let's
it matters.
stop
It's not
the
accurate
Capricorn.
science.
Let's stop the whole podcast just to find out the astral signs of Mao. Let's do that right now.
I need to know.
But it's gonna be really telling about his personality. Because is he a
boy.
leader? You know? Because then he's a
All right,
Capricorn.
everybody, that's been our show, and we'll see you next week.
I just want to title this podcast "Astrological Signs of Dictators." I think that's a really good opening.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was a Capricorn, so he was a leader.
man.
You know what? That's very telling. Actually,
God, are you fucking
wow,
my ass?
that makes sense.
Just the way
I
that
know,
you said
there's
that,
no science
the way that you
behind
said that
it.
was like a mom that just found out about like astrological signs, and you're like, that's very telling.
I am a Taurus. I know.
Oh my god.
All right.
God. Okay, anyway, he's born to a family of wealthy farmers and landowners in Hunan province. That's important. Keep that in your mind. His father was, in fact, one of the wealthiest farmers in the area, which afforded Mao many luxuries, such as an education and numerous books. He was quite
Lucky.
the reader. Am I right, ladies?
Quite the catch.
Now, did he get a chance to read about like I don't just like different forms or methods of type of dictatorships that were happening in other countries at the point, or
No,
was
he was a
given
big,
limited exposure?
philosophy reader. So at the time, I do remember reading that Confucianism was widely taught in schools.
Gotcha.
So he had to read that,
Right.
but I think he read a lot of other philosophical based books because
Yeah, do you know if he got any sort of schooling in astrology at all?
you know what? What does it say about Capricorns? Brie, what does it say about Capricorns?
Resident expert Brie.
So no shit. Literally, Capricorns are strong-willed leaders. That I swear to God, and that's why it makes sense. And I know that you guys are gonna make fun of me for that, but he is a Capricorn, and I can guarantee you, as we go through his story, his traits will show, and
Yeah,
he will align.
Absolutely.
Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. He has his first marriage. It's an arranged marriage with Liu Yigu. Ooh, that's not. I bet she got bullied for that. At the age of 13. So he was 13. I believe she was like 16 or something like that.
Ripe old age.
Yes, she was
Right.
halfway in the grave at
Right.
that point. He showed visual disdain and criticized the institution of arranged marriage, which I think is the most creative way to get out of a bad marriage, is to just criticize the institution of marriage.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
how badly do you dislike someone?
gotta go
where
whole
you
hog.
Just the whole fucking thing disgusts you.
You know what? Not just you, bitch. It is marriage. It is marriage's problem.
This whole thing.
No, babe.
What'd you say?
No, babe, it's not you. Babe. It's not you, alright? Listen, like, I just feel like, marriage is just fucked in general. Let's just change the fucking law. Like, let's just do it, and I don't want, and I know what you're gonna think is like, oh, he has commitment issues, or, oh, he's too afraid to connect, but no, bitch. Let's just change the law and make it about me.
Well, that worked apparently because she died in 1910.
Whoa!
Publicly disgraced. I'm sure she developed an ulcer. I don't think they revised the laws on marriage, though. So,
Big yikes.
big yikes.
But I mean, he got out of it, so.
Good for him.
What a
He's on the
win.
market.
Yeah.
He's feeling good.
Hey, way to dodge a fucking bullet, am I right?
Really?
Well, he's newly single and he goes to Peking University. Look out, ladies.
Some pussy, am I right?
It's his dating profile.
Nothing like
He is a
college to
Capricorn.
get you over a failed marriage where your wife dies publicly disgraced.
Yeah. You know,
So
that
she-
thing that we all go through.
Oh my god, am I right? It's
I
freshman
remember
year.
when my first marriage failed. And my husband died disgraced publicly. It was a rough time in my life, but you know, college really helped me find myself.
Yep, he read,
Don't worry, ladies. I have no more connections to my exes. It's all about you now.
and he coped with this by reading Leninist and Marxist works. Spent much of his youth writing in revolutionary papers, attending protests, going to marches, getting involved with the Communist Party. Oh my god, like I swear to god, they have written so much on this Wikipedia page about everything he did in the war. He was a military leader, just like take my word for it. He was well liked in the Communist Party. Because
I believe you.
I don't want to do that. Glazes over all of his life's
Continue, sorry.
accomplishments. Anyways, he gets married to his second wife, which is what I'm concerned about.
Bachelor number 2. Or I guess bachelorette number 2. Whatever.
Bachelorette number 2. Her name is Yang Kawai.
Wow.
Yang. Her name is Yang.
All right.
In 1920, she was also an active revolutionary. They were separated in 1927, and she was executed by the Kuomintang in 1930 during a revolutionary event.
Oh, wow, there's like this weird running thread in all of his relationships, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is. Oh, right, it's death.
Ugh, maybe it's not him. It's not him.
It's just an unlucky streak.
Yeah,
Gotta
my
be.
previous relationship ended pretty badly. She got publicly executed.
Oh man, that's rough.
I don't hold anything like internally about it. I'm completely over it. He says as he gets married in 1928 before she gets executed.
Oh dear.
That's He Zizhen, who was also an active revolutionary. He has a type. She joined him on the Long March and bore him 5 children. Just a little asterisk, the Long March was an evasive strategy where the Red Army traveled 5,600 miles in 370 days. That is a shitload of miles. That is more miles than I've ever logged on my Fitbit, so I know it's a lot of miles. And
Hashtag a ride or die bitch, though, am I right? Like, she was in it for the long
she's
haul.
really into it. She's really into him. This is credited as one of Mao's finest moments. He was responsible for directing the Long March. He gained support from his party, and it's actually one of the reasons he was successful in seizing China, because it made the Kuomintang a lot weaker because they were fighting other battles, while the majority of the Red Army was safe and unharmed.
Gotcha.
His wife on the Long March was gravely injured with a shrapnel injury to the head.
Ow.
Not a great injury. And while receiving treatment for her shrapnel injury as a war hero, Mao divorces her
Class act.
and marries an actress called Zhang Xing, and that's Madame Mao.
That whore!
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question that might be looked at as a negative question to ask? How fucked up was her face?
Are you asking how attractive she is?
I'm saying I don't like if things
dear
were to
God.
change.
I just want to clarify. Are you asking about how attractive Madame Mao is, or are you asking the current state of the woman's face with a shrapnel injury to her head?
Which one is less worse?
Jesus fucking Christ!
Oh my god!
Both are bad. I'm gonna say right now,
Bad.
both are pretty bad.
Bad questions. We're gonna get some letters. God.
Wow, this is the first fucking episode, and we are not gonna get a single ad on here.
Nope. Please,
Oh, Jesus.
please sponsor us.
It's
Dollar
gonna be
Shave Club.
Yeah, it's gonna be Dollar Shave Club or some like eclectic shit.
Like Blue Apron.
I've looked up Madame Mao.
Oh.
I don't get it, is all I'm gonna say.
All
Apparently
right.
she had a lot of men she slept with. Not like I'm slut shaming her. I'm not slut shaming the wife of a dictator.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't get it. That's all I'm saying. You can
Looks
look
like
it
she
up.
was-
You could.
She was pretty when she was
You
young.
know, sometimes you just gotta meet her.
But she doesn't look like, a man would leave his gravely injured wife for her.
I mean, as Brie so aptly pointed out,
Mao is
her
a gentleman.
face, though,
You know what I mean?
was ruined by shrapnel. So, the
Yeah, she
bar
also,
was
fun
pretty
fact,
low.
I googled how she died. She died in like the 80s completely alone. So,
Whoa,
yeah.
that fucking sucks.
Moving on!
Yeah, anyway.
So Madame Mao, she was born March 19th, 1814 in Zhongshan, China, and her birth name is Li Shumyang. She was the daughter of a carpenter and his concubine, lowering her status. It's the equivalent of being born out of wedlock, right?
Gotcha.
So her very, very young mother separated from her father. They had marital issues. She found work as a domestic servant. She worked in a cigarette rolling factory for a while. Her mother and her moved around. Madame Mao was bullied by her peers for being illegitimate. Again, this has to do with the class thing that was super important during the time period. When she was 14, she and her mother moved back to Jinan, where she found success as an actress at 14.
Nice.
So in 1931, she married her first husband, son of a businessman. Marriage soon ended. They just weren't happy, which I'm
son of a
shocked the
businessman.
concept of divorce existed in the same time period where Mao's wife died publicly humiliated. But whatever, letting it go.
Whatever, it's fine.
So when she went to Qingdao University, she met Yu Qiwei, the man who introduced her to communism, and stood by her side when she took the oath for the CCP in 1933. So Mao was a revolutionary. She was actively involved. She was going to protests and marches. She definitely wasn't like joining Mao on the Long March kind of revolutionary.
Not
but,
to compare, but
not saying that she's not a war hero, but she did her part, I guess. She moved to Shanghai to continue her career as a film actress, where she married Tang Na in March of 1936, while continuing her relationship with Yu Qiwei. It was a massive scandal after Tang found out, and he tried to kill himself twice in their divorce process, so they got a divorce. There wasn't a lot of details, but I know that she had a lot of flings here and there. Like, she was in, Chinese Hollywood. So people were kind of sleeping around and partying. It's totally normal at the time period. Again, keep that in your brain, an important detail. I'm not bringing it up for no fucking reason.
oh, see, I thought you were just rambling. Whatever.
All right.
Do you know how many Wikipedia articles I read to write this? Everything in here is essential. Wow. So during the Japanese invasion of Shanghai, she went to Xi'an to continue her political activity. My friend has read a whole book on the rape of Nanking, and I didn't realize that that's this thing. This wasn't in Nanking, but this is around the same time. The Japanese invaded, and there was no film industry during this intermediate time period. So she met Mao, who was 21 years her senior. And then that's when they got together.
Nice.
I've also seen pictures of Mao, and I seriously don't get it. So she must have had some incredible foresight or something, because
This guy,
I just don't get it.
he's
just don't
gonna
understand.
own our country one day.
Yeah, because
I
she's
can feel it.
she's making a smart decision by reflecting on the last couple wives he's had.
Yeah. Ooh, good track
Right?
record. Am I
Yeah,
right, ladies?
really awesome.
So after...
I don't know. I just feel like maybe I could change him. I just feel like if I were to try to fix him, and don't know. I think he's like, I don't know. Like, I feel like he has something to him.
Honestly,
But, like,
that's
I don't know. I
but
feel like
you're
other guys
not
don't
far
have.
from the truth. I think one of the reasons Mao was as successful as he was is because of Madame Mao. But like, we'll get into that. So also, this is also important. Because Mao wanted to divorce his critically injured veteran wife, which I'm just not going to get over, the CCP made a deal where he's able to leave his wife and 5 children to marry her, but she's not allowed to get engaged in any politics for 30 years. That's their agreement.
All right.
Something she agrees to, and she completely adheres to, and she doesn't ever break that rule. But that's important because she doesn't get involved in politics until that 30-year time is up.
Okay.
So remember that. That's important. So those are the 2 primary people that I really only care about. I could get into a lot of background, but that's really all that matters. So let's talk about the Communist Party. So there's good and bad news to the Communist Party being in power. Talk about downsides. So I didn't emphasize this enough the first time I told the story, but there's a lot of initial deaths when they first take power, because you have an entire group of people that have been subjugated for hundreds and hundreds of years, and now they finally have the opportunity to get back at their quote-unquote oppressors.
Sure.
So what they did is mass executions.
Ooh.
They basically brought out anyone that owned land, that was any political position of power, that was sympathizing towards the Kuomintang, publicly executed them, humiliated them. I remember there was a story that I read where so many people were killing themselves to avoid public humiliation that, like, you had to be careful when walking in cities because you could get hit by a body on its way down.
Holy shit.
So, for example, one statistic I found that was solid was between October of 1950 and August of 1951. I think that's like about 6 months, 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
Over 28,000 people were executed in one city.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's
Jesus
people who were
fucking
accused of
Christ.
sympathizing with the Kuomintang or being spies / revolutionaries. Whether there's an actual basis for that is I can't tell you.
That was just
But
accusation.
right? But that's what it said in the stat.
Damn.
So that's just a qualifying of what the transition state was. There was a lot of public executions and murder. It's almost kind of like a political baptism, and they killed everyone that had any position of power whatsoever to wipe away the old and bring in the new.
Right.
What a way to do it.
It's a way to do it.
And that's when we hide all of our shit,
course.
ladies and gentlemen. I'd be that one guy burying things in
A
my field,
landowner?
man. Like,
No.
yeah, man.
What are you talking about? You
No.
start burying books.
What?
No, don't own these.
Jib, we see the... Jib, last week you drove by in your jet ski yelling, "What up,
Nah, different guy.
fuckers?"
No, not
Different guy.
me.
I look like a lot of guys.
No.
in fact, but it's not me.
One of those faces, you know?
There was some good things. Again, like, this is truly the only revolution that they'd had where, like, people are legitimately getting democratic control. People who were veterans and did the Long March are being appointed to positions of power. They're redistributing wealth. People who have otherwise never had access to food or, like, clean housing arrangements are living in homes with food supplies available. Like, there are good aspects to this. Obviously, nobody would have enjoyed the time they had in it. Without, like, nobody would have supported Mao as much as they did if there weren't good things.
Sure.
And I'd say it was like 1946, right? So the bad things start happening in about 1960-ish, right? So there were 15 great years,
Not bad.
But like any marriage, after 15 years, it starts you know.
Oh yeah, that's how that old saying goes. Any marriage is great until 15 years after.
Thank you, Brooke. That's the old adage I was thinking of.
Right.
So, two big things he dropped the ball on. Great Leap Forward was a policy that was intended to improve steel production. Not by mining steel, no. It was by forcing civilians, especially farmers, to build steel furnaces from their backyard and produce steel on their own by just collecting steel and melting it. I don't really understand what his MO was. But the steel they yielded was poor quality because they had no fucking idea how to temper steel. And literally everyone stopped what they were doing because they needed to make steel and meet their quota. What that translates to is people were abandoning their crops to make steel.
Do you have any idea what would happen if they didn't meet their quota?
I don't remember. Like, I do remember when I read about it in Wild Swans. It was basically, like, you would be way more inclined to abandon your field and your food to meet this quota.
Gotcha.
Than to not. So I don't think there was anything like death, but, like, people were also super patriotic, so it's not like people were like, fuck that noise, and, like, didn't want to meet their steel quota. They wanted to support their country.
Right.
So it sounds like people were partially willing, but partially a little afraid. So additionally, whatever grain and food they had left, the CCP, under the advice of Mao, decided to trade the grain for goods from Russia because Russia had a massive famine after the Soviets took power.
Sure.
And that resulted in their mass famine. And so I asked this last time I recorded this. I asked you guys to guess how many people you thought died. And the cap I used is I think 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember the highest guess was 8 million people. This massive famine from 1959 to 1962 killed 30 million people.
Holy shit.
Roughly speaking.
It's a lot of people.
The count is anywhere from 20 to 55 million, but it's so difficult to nail down these numbers that 30 is generally accepted. I tried to look for a statistic that really puts this into scale. And in LA County as a whole, all of it is 10 million people. 10 million, right? So wow. 3 times that many died.
Wow. Jesus Christ.
I think when I looked it up, it's literally, it was 2 or 3% of the population died. That's a lot of fucking people.
Yeah, that's... Fuck.
So even on the lower estimate, that's twice the amount of people that live in LA County. Roughly half of the people were under the age of 10. Okay, that was weird muffling. Whatever. Roughly half the people were under the age of 10. So I read a book called Wild Swans by Young Chang, and she actually talks about this famine in horrific detail. An example she gave was there was a man in her village that turned himself into the authorities because he couldn't handle the emotional burden, that he had killed his children and ate them because he was so hungry. Yeah, he was that hungry. Children were being kidnapped off the streets. She gave another example that there was a child that went missing, and a couple weeks later, a 3-year-old was wearing their clothes, and they're like, "Where'd you get that clothing? That's my son's clothing. Where did you find that?" And it turns out that the 3-year-old had been kidnapped, and its meat had been sold on the black market.
Jesus fucking Christ.
This is literally the worst famine in all of human history, and it was entirely Mao's fault because he was consulting for this. He was a really, really, really great military leader, but he was not a good leader. You're not always going to get both, right? So by 1965, after the famine had been, over, he'd been edged out of power because the CCP, it wasn't full of morons. They knew that he wasn't capable of leading a country, and they edged him out of power.
And they're like, people are eating their kids, buddy.
Hey, buddy, tapping you out.
Get some new blood in there.
This looks bad, so we're gonna clean this up a bit. They tried to edge him out. He was fully aware that he was being sidelined, but again, this is around the time period Madame Mau's 30-year silence is finally elapsed.
Ding, ding, ding.
So, this is where my topic actually begins. All this has been background.
Welcome to hour 2, ladies and gentlemen, where it finally starts.
Woo! I want to start this off with a little poem that Young Chang put in her book, Wild Swans. This was a poem that appeared in newspapers, and she said that everyone in her school memorized this poem by heart when it was published in 1964.
All right.
But, like, cute.
Oh, it's like the Pledge of Allegiance kind of, but...
Oh, I have a bad feeling about this.
Like spring, I treat my comrades warmly. Like summer, I am full of ardor for my revolutionary work. I eliminate my individualism as an autumn gale sweeps away fallen leaves, and to the class enemy, I am cruel and ruthless like harsh winter. Yikes. Am I right?
Well, neat.
Oh. How old was she when she memorized this? I'm sorry?
She was...
How old was she?
Gosh, she had to be like 12 right now.
Jesus Christ.
Yikes. So Mao wants power.
Yikes.
His opponents have edged him out of power. So his opponents actually wanted to deify him because in their defense, they thought, if they make him a figurehead that everybody worships, but with like no actual power, he feels special. We don't have to worry about him getting in our way. And it's going to lessen his actual power because he's just kind of treated like a god. But his wife is, I think, incredibly intelligent, and she realized this was a perfect opportunity for him to actually gain his power back. And she also realized that this is a great opportunity. If you remember, both of them could be considered bourgeoisie. He had wealthy farmland parents who were one of the wealthiest in the province. And she came from poor upbringings, but she lived in lavish luxury in Chinese Hollywood. Ooh, that's...
Yeah, how'd they pull out of that though? How'd they pull out of that? Like, did everyone was like, oh, you guys are fine, the leaders are fine, but
honestly,
everyone else gets to go. Like, how'd they?
Like, this whole government is just full of so many asterisks. But I think the biggest part that I'm going to talk about is they lie. So she's going to use this as a really great opportunity to physically wipe out anyone that remembers her before the revolution, because she doesn't want it to get out that she was bourgeoisie. She's not an idiot.
Fair.
So before this really kicks into high gear, children were being constantly bombarded with pro-Mao propaganda, right? They were trying to make him into a deity. So people were setting up Mao museums in their own homes. Like, people set aside space in their home to put up images of him. They put up grossly exaggerated depictions of the Kuomintang and these glowing rosy images of the CCP as heroes. Interestingly enough, they really glazed over Mao's upbringing. I mean, they had to, in order to make him fit the narrative, right?
Sure.
This is literally called the cult of Mao. That's what they historically call it. And it was really successful to gradually impress upon population that Mao is a god figure. So the author of Wild Swans vividly remembers that her father made her change her New Year's resolution in 1965 from "I will obey my grandmother," which is like a cultural thing that kids do. It just means like filial piety and stuff like that. Like, it's a really common resolution for kids. To "I will obey Chairman Mao."
Oof.
Which is just really, the watershed
Can you imagine having
moment.
like kids in school resolve on New Year's Day that they're going to obey Donald Trump? Can you fucking imagine?
God, fuck,
Oh
dude.
my god.
I can't.
Shit.
I will follow Trump on Twitter.
Don't do it, kids.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. She was like 12 at the time, too.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and then there was a documentary I was watching, and Anchi Min, she was an author. I'd say later in this what she wrote, but she recalls that she learned "Long Live Chairman Mao" before she learned to write her own name.
Good
So this
Lord.
is like, this is kids,
Oh my
right? These
God.
are kids that are being grown up in this world where Mao is literally a god figure, right? So that makes it really easy when things start ramping up. You already have this foundation of the cult of Mao. You know, kids are very impressionable. Yeah, their whole, if you
That's all
learn
they
to
know.
write "Long Live Chairman Mao" before you write your own name, I think that really communicates the importance that he has in your life. Mm-hmm. You know? So it isn't long before the Gang of
Absolutely.
Four is established in 1966. Priming has already taken place for the cult of Mao, and so the Gang of Four is the result of Madame Mao being appointed to the deputy director of the Central Cultural Revolution Group. Fuck, there's a lot of C's in everything in this fucking passage. So she met Zhang Qingchao, Yao Wenyang, and Wang Hanwen. These four grouped to become the primary influences in Chinese culture, and were the group to establish what is okay and what isn't okay as far as media consumption goes. So one of the first steps of the Cultural Revolution was to politicize art and culture. So anything from feudal China, whether it be plays, musics, paintings, poetry, is swiftly banned and replaced with things that Madame Mao approved of, which tended to be very few things. So revolutionary art was emphasized to such a degree that people would be saying the same plays, same operas, same art, time and time again, like constantly.
Oh boy.
That praised Mao, praised the revolution. Anything from time past was literally called the symbol of the oppressor and the bourgeoisie. So people basically just saw the glorification of the CCP for 10 straight years.
Good Lord.
In a documentary I was watching, so Anchi Min, she's the author of Red Azaleas, said that they would release one new propaganda film a year, generally starring Madame Mao, because she's an actress.
Sure.
And the nation would just watch it over and over and over again. So, like, imagine seeing just one film on repeat
For a year.
for a year.
No.
Yeah, I don't think the only movie I'd be able to do that with is, like, maybe, like, Shrek.
Imagine that being that. Oh yes, God yes. Imagine though, like being like the casting director. You know what I mean? Just being like, well, I guess it's gonna be Madame Mao. Like
there's just like that one other
there's
actress
no
in
other
Hollywood
option.
that's like, or she's Hollywood, but that's watching this and going, it should have been me. It should still be me.
There's the one actress that keeps showing up to
Madame Mao
auditions.
and
You
one
know
other
it's clearly
one.
gonna be her. You know what I mean?
I really
This
worked
audition was
hard.
my audition. I'm feeling great. And they're like, it's,
I love
Madame
her.
Mao again? And she's like, fuck.
Bitch!
Why do they choose her? I don't see what I don't.
Juilliard?
I went to Juilliard. God damn it! I'm going to.
So nothing from the outside was let in as well, right? No outside influences were let into China.
Sure.
And there were, of course, people who opposed this, people who are arguing that, like, traditional Chinese culture, yes, was a thing of the past, but we can still admire them, and, like, admiring cultural artifacts is not tantamount to political treason. Mm-hmm. Those people were killed and imprisoned, though, so that's all I have for that. I have no follow-up. They were killed and imprisoned. No follow-up, Your Honor.
No further questioning.
Yeah.
So things really, really start to ramp up here. So this is where, in my opinion, the scariest part happens.
Okay.
Self-censorship. Anything related to old China was removed and banned. I mentioned this with art, but this really extends to everything else, including street signs. So people went out into streets, literally removing street signs, renaming stores, and changing their own names. Many children changed their names because they decided that their name should be something that, quote-unquote, inspires the courage and strength of the CCP. So Young Chang, for example, that's not her birth name. Her birth name is Air Hong, which means wild swan, I believe. I believe it's wild swan. It's some iteration of swan.
That makes sense.
That's beautiful.
But it sounds like the Chinese word for faded red. And since the communists were not faded, there was a negative implication to her name. So at the age of 12, she asked her parents to give her a new name with a military ring to it. So she was renamed Young, which means martial affairs.
What the fuck?
Like, this is super common. Like, this is, like, a lot of kids did this.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember she had an uncle, too, that was really loyal to the Kuomintang because he was really good to him. They were really good to him, so he renamed himself Loyalty because he was loyal to the Kuomintang. Pretty sure he was put in a work camp. As you do.
Sure.
So, yeah, they changed their names. So I in a documentary I watched, Li Jizhang, author of The Red Scarf Girl, gave an example where the name Great Prosperity Market was renamed because prosperity hinted at making money, and making money was bad.
What the fuck?
So they changed it to something else. She didn't say she remembered, but there was a theater named Peace Theater, and they renamed it to Revolution Theater because peace is bad.
Hold up. So, like, one of the tenets of communism is eventually peace. So, like...
Nope.
Not our communism.
Just revolution forever, never
stable government.
CCP. Yeah.
Yes. CCP.
Wow.
Well, I think it's also too, part of it is they're trying to keep them ramped up, right? Like, you know, once you feel comfortable, that 15 years of good times they had, people were getting pretty lax. Like, you know, they have nothing to fight for anymore. They're comfortable. There's not oppression happening. And, like,
all good
now...
things.
No. I can see how you could understand that as a bourgeoisie.
Oh, God.
No, but that's a very fair point in the sense that, like, you say, oh, these are all good things, but the promotion of positivity, right, and peace, and that leads to opening your mindset and thinking, where if you use a fear tactic such as war or anything with violence and, like, being strong, that's something that you can't resist, that you can't fight back, because if you try to fight back or resist, it's too strong for you. I think it's fear works better as a tactic and is less hopeful as a tactic than something like peace and love is.
And that's what's horrifying me, because these are long-term changes.
Right.
Like, streets are permanently renamed for the sake of revolution.
To this day?
To this day, I think a lot of the stuff has not changed, and I'll talk about that at the end, because that's going to be a bummer within itself.
Yay.
So, he's already pretty deified at this point in the mid to late 60s. So it's not too much of a stretch when he starts weaponizing people's devotion. Because at this point, he's getting a little crazy. I don't remember when specifically he contracts syphilis. But I mean, no, they're like, on a serious note though, like, actually for real, when I was watching this documentary, like, the women who would sleep with him would brag about getting syphilis because they got it from him. Like, how fucked is that?
Yeah, I got syphilis, but it was famous syphilis, so...
Flip's hair.
Shut the
No,
fuck
it wasn't
up.
famous syphilis. It was God's
so, like,
syphilis,
you know,
right?
syphilis eats at your brain, right?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I don't know if it was at this time, but I know at some point they stop publishing him as much. And he claims that it's because they are trying to silence him. And, like, because there's such a vocal audience that love him, they riot and protest and demand that anything he writes gets published. This is how the Red Little Book eventually comes to be. The Red Little Book is this little book that is red, shock, that's full of quotations from him. And it's, you know, it's like the communist Bible. Like, everyone would have their own little red book on them at all times.
Gotcha.
Like, you'd keep, like a third limb, you know, you'd have your red book with you at all times. what caused the most anger, and this is when Madame Mao really, all of her plans come to fruition. These kids that have been waterboarded with propaganda for years eventually get outraged enough to form the Red Guards, which is, all the students that have been fed this propaganda. They're really angry. They're really protective. I don't think the Maos are idiots. I think they knew that they couldn't physically do revolutionary stuff to keep their power themselves, because that could get them ousted. Right. But if other people did it, well, it's not like they can stop them or anything. So they immediately escalate to property damage and violence. They would physically burn and destroy books in public that went against Mao's teaching. They damaged and burnt down buildings. They went to museums and temples and destroyed valuable, irreplaceable cultural artifacts, may I add. They were doing this under Mao's command to destroy the, quote, four olds. So that's old ideas, old customs, old habits, and old culture. They went as far as to prevent masters of art and history from passing down their knowledge to the next generation, effectively erasing Chinese culture and history. Oh, dear. So it's pretty easy to take advantage of children and teenagers as it is, I feel. But I feel also that the reason why this was so easy was, all of their parents were literally revolutionaries that fought in wars. So this is a normalized culture to them. People want to feel like they are accomplishing what their elders have accomplished. Right. And compound that on teenage angst, you have like a deity telling you, hey, all that rage and anger you have, yeah, that's fine. Use it and hurt other people and destroy property. It's like, it's like the weekend divorced dad buying you sugary cereal,
I'm the cool parent.
Yeah, you can destroy anything you want, kid. Oof. Also, don't forget the Suave shampoo is in the shower and nothing else.
God.
Also, it reminds me of like a Justin Bieber fans or some shit, where it's like,
shit, yeah.
Selena Gomez is enemy number one, right? And they just go for her throat. And even though Justin Bieber isn't technically, telling the fans to send death threats to Selena Gomez, right?
Ooh.
Like, there's I mean,
honestly, if we were to use
would you
Jake
be surprised
Paul as an example,
are you
God, what a fucking dumpster
he
fire.
Doesn't tell these kids to have like riots at places he attends, but he doesn't stop them. Just throwing it out there, I'm not comparing him to a genocidal dictator.
That's not what's being said.
But
right? No,
I'm just saying.
No.
But we're on the same path.
I don't want to get hunted down by the Jake Paulers. Thank you very much.
I mean, what?
Oh, please don't kill me. Thanks, guys. Anyway.
So.
God.
Oh, I actually put in here a quote from him that I copied from the Little Red Book. Our objective is to struggle.
I have included Jake Paul for your reference. Sorry. Christ.
No, quote now. Our objective is to struggle against and crush those persons in authority who are taking the capitalist road, so as to facilitate the consolidation and development of the socialist system.
Oh, dear.
Yikes. And so another thing, kids already separate themselves on class and school, I think, right? But in this specific society, your class as a child is based on your parents' position in the Communist Party. So if you had a parent, let's say, who was a level 10 in the Communist Party, which, like, 20,000 people in all of China had, 20,000 people were level 10, right? You would be way higher up on the totem pole than a common factory worker's child. So
makes sense.
If you had parents in positions of power, you were labeled white. If your parents had little position, like you weren't super high up there, but you weren't a class enemy, you were considered gray. So if you had a parent who in any shape, way, or form could be declared against the party, or you have something previously in your history that is super out of your control, you were labeled black. And those people were relentlessly bullied, socially isolated, while the whites were whites, and I mean whites isn't categorically speaking,
More
were
letters.
afforded. God, fuck! How many tweets am I gonna get from this?
Shit, Jesus.
They were afforded immense leniency when it came to their behavior. Like, they could probably beat down their teacher and nobody would do anything. And to like really put into perspective how important this was to them. I believe in Wild Swan, she talks about a girl that she knew and was friends with who was labeled black because somebody in her family did something and completely out of her control, they labeled her black, and she jumped off the building in front of everyone and tried to kill herself.
She tried. She didn't succeed?
I don't believe she did. I think she was crippled.
Oh, God.
Or she lived and she was fine. I don't know. Let's live by that one, right? She was fine, bro.
Jesus fucking Christ, that's awful.
And your class could change. So if everybody was burning anti-Mao literature, you better fucking burn the literature with them, or you were going to be moved down to gray or, God forbid, black, right?
Shit.
If you didn't do what everybody else was doing, if you weren't doing the most, you would be docked. So stakes were really high.
Oh, holy fuck.
And, you have these pressures, just like general teenage pressures being weaponized that, they already exist, but now they're being weaponized to pressure people into participating in the revolution.
Right. Oh, my God.
So school is canceled at this point.
No shit.
School's out!
It's
teachers
their
can't
snow
teach
day.
anything anymore. Like, they can't teach anything that isn't from the mouth of Mao.
Right.
So they can't teach history. They can't teach Chinese language because that requires Chinese culture, which is not allowed. They can't teach any, math or science because that's a symbol of the bourgeoisie.
Wow.
They can't teach anything. So instead they're doing, playground stuff, like writing glowing articles about Mao, practicing throwing imitation grenades, marching in formation, going to fields to bury wildflowers because they're the symbol of the bourgeoisie. We all remember when we did that, am I right?
You're right, back in the day.
Yeah, what Red Guards were Mao's mobilized forces. They were kind of kept on retainer for they were a standing army, really, in every sense. They were being trained for battle. An Shi-min remembers waking up at 4 a.m. to practice stabbing American soldier dummies with bayonets while her leaders told her, "Don't stop until you see intestines or they might do the same to you."
God,
this is children.
damn.
This is 14-year-old kids waking up at 4 a.m. to stab soldier dummies, right? So now things get violent.
Now things get violent.
Now, physical violence started with the teachers. Children could openly beat their teachers, and the teachers couldn't fight back at the risk of losing their job.
Neat.
Or much worse, best case scenario, you get fired.
Yeah.
So he had these weaponized children with powers that couldn't be checked by anyone, even adults. At the end, the kids had the power to beat their parents if their parents were found to be class enemies. They could kill civilians if they needed to. There was a Guardian article I read where this guy, Chen Shuxang, talks about how his father was taken by the Red Guard, chained to a radiator, and literally beaten to death in front of his wife. And his mother came home covered in blood with her clothing torn to shreds to tell her children that their father wasn't coming home. And to this day has no idea why he was picked up by the Red Guards.
Christ.
Like, they've never officially told him. There's no reason. They just needed... I don't know. They needed to one-up everyone. So they started exercising their authority as little spies. They were encouraged to turn people in for being enemies to the party, so everybody was really on edge. One practice that was really common was to go into the homes of people suspected of being class enemies, rounding them up and putting them on parade. So they would take these people, they'd put dunce caps on them, they'd put signs around their neck displaying what they're being accused of. Then they'd be carried around the entire town on a cart so that everyone can see what they're being accused of. Then they were taken to these like big town centers and they would be yelled at and publicly humiliated for hours.
God damn.
And they would just kowtow. You know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, kowtow for hours, asking for forgiveness, while, like, think of, like, an auditorium, like a lecture auditorium in a school. That's what I'm talking about. People would just be sitting there yelling at them.
God.
And Wild Swan, she really does articulate that this really just became, like, I don't really like this person, and I think they did this thing, and so they're gonna get arrested, and everybody can yell at them for hours.
Oh, it was just abused.
It was just abuse. So her mom was detained and publicly humiliated numerous times because a coworker of hers didn't like her. It didn't matter that she was a grassroots communist or that she participated in the Long March or that she was almost killed for being communist before they took power. She was a valuable government employee that never did any wrong, but she couldn't escape the fact that 20 plus years ago she had some connection with the Kuomintang or was afforded luxuries that were now considered bourgeoisie.
God.
Right? But the harder you beat, the more devout you appeared to Mao. So it was like this giant contest of, you know, who can do the most, who can find the wolf in sheep's clothing, right? People were constantly looking for someone to put on trial.
Oh, man.
So you may be asking, well, has anyone spoken out about this? Yeah, people did. And the example that I have is Young Chang, her father. So her father was literally, he was born in poverty. He was a grassroots communist, did the Long March, participated in many battles. He was a level 10 party member, which was afforded to literally 20,000 people in all of China, which was like 600 million people at the time, right? He was fucking high up there.
Sure.
And this is grossly simplifying the story, but, you know, when he was seeing all this violence, he was a very principled man, and he thought that maybe Mao didn't know. And he wrote him a letter with very fair and level-headed complaints about the beatings and the violence. He was swiftly arrested, and he was tortured for months on ends, where he was driven to insanity and was sent home with schizophrenia. After being treated and rehabilitated, which his family had to fight to rehabilitate him because the Communist Party wouldn't pay to treat him.
Right.
Then he was exiled to a work camp where he died prematurely due to poor treatment and exhaustion. Just to add salt to the wound, because he had complained about the Communist Party, he was considered a class enemy, and they were going to have people at his funeral speak ill about him. And his mother had to, her mother, so his wife, had to aggressively fight against people that wanted to denounce him at his own funeral. And she was able to succeed. He definitely didn't get the funeral he deserved as a war hero. But as a result of her protesting this, she had to go to a ton of denunciation meetings, which is what those meetings were called. They were called struggle sessions, but yeah, she had to go to these denunciation meetings for trying to get a decent funeral for her husband. So that is the results of speaking up. So stakes are obviously super fucking high to just go along with what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
So at this point, Mao realized that he fucked up. But Mao isn't someone to say, hey, my bee. You know, he's not that guy.
You know, it's just a mistake, learning curve. We're all learning here.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Totally is. All's forgiven, Mao. Totally.
Yeah, you know, only only 30 million deaths in, you know what? And I feel like we could have done a lot worse.
Yeah, so
Worse.
his solution to this is he sets up a re-education program, which basically he sends all of these kids that are flooding into Beijing and fighting for him and causing violence. He sends them all into little provinces across China to learn what it is like to live as the working class. It is basically slave labor. Like, the conditions the author describes is you're working like a peasant with very little to no pay, grueling hours, very little food. He just wants to separate them. That's all he wants to do. But after 3 years of schools being closed, people constantly being humiliated and beaten to death, nothing is working anymore. Like, hospitals are barely clinics. Support systems are closed. Children are roaming like pack animals. Like, if you walked on the street and you were wearing something that could be considered bourgeoisie, which I don't even know what that is.
What does that even mean?
Everybody's poor. You could be beaten within an inch of your life.
God damn.
So the Red Guards have been flooding into Beijing for years. At the point, the housing situation is like a packing house. The author of Wild Swans, she describes it as like overpacked. There's body lice everywhere. Illnesses just running through the community. At some point, tensions get so high that the Red Guards start fighting with each other. So an example of factional fighting in a documentary I saw, James Lilly, who was a U.S. ambassador to China he was an ambassador from 89 to 91, but he was there for the Cultural Revolution. And he said in Wuzhou, best guess, Wuzhou, two factions fought to the point where the losing side was killed, right? So they lined up the losing side, tied their hands behind their back, shot them in the back of the head, and then dumped all the bodies in the river. Thing is, the city is upstream of Hong Kong. So all of these bodies are going downstream and running through Hong Kong.
Oh, no.
And he remembers seeing all of these bodies running through Hong Kong, and he's like,
Oh, dear.
he's like, he knew in that moment that like millions of people must have died during the Cultural Revolution, because
so
this
awful.
is just an example, right? So we finally hit 1968.
Finally.
8 pages in. So in 1969, this is probably the funniest part of the story to me. He just declares that the Cultural Revolution is over. He's like, hey
All right,
guys,
we're done.
we had some fun, but
It's been real.
I think we're done. I think we're done here. And everyone's just like, all right. And then just go home.
All right. We've been done for a while.
They just, I don't know, just everybody's like, well, back to business as usual, as if you don't remember your classmate beating your mother within an inch of their life. You're just like, algebra homework done this week, am I right? Like, I don't understand how the fuck you just go back to business as usual. But they do. We're just going
Just
back to
me?
normal. We're
All
not
right.
gonna talk about this at all, or no, we're just
about what?
going back to work. Okay.
Guess we're back.
God fucking Christ. Good news time. Zhu Enlai was the prime minister at the time and had control over the People's Liberation Army, which was quickly directed to squish the Red Army with a vengeance. They got China running like a well-oiled machine again. I mean, as much as you fucking can. Kids go back to school, super great. Zhu establishes diplomatic relations with the U.S. through Henry Kissinger, super great.
Right.
Nixon, a really famous anti-communist, visits China diplomatically, super awesome, but a little weird because they used his face on the training dummies that the Red Guards would stab with their bayonets.
Aye.
Otherwise, great turnaround.
All right, guys, don't actually stab him this time.
Yeah, no, in a documentary, like, the girl who was in the Red Guards was talking about how weird it was. Like, they were just openly greeting Nixon, and she was like, isn't this the guy that we stabbed a lot? And everyone's like, no, he's cool now. And she's like, okay. God damn it.
Jesus fucking Christ.
And a little hope during Nixon's visit, Mao's staff has to hide oxygen tanks and medical equipment behind plants because he is dying. Thank fucking God.
Awesome.
1976 September, Mao dies. And, as I'm sure you can fucking predict, as soon as he dies, everything is good again.
Oh, no.
So in 1981, the Gang of Four is arrested. So Yao Wengyuan and Wang Hanwen both apologize and seem legitimately repentant. So I think they only get prison time. They get a lot of prison time, but they get prison time.
Quite a bit of it.
However, Madame Mao and Zhang Chengshao admit no error in their behavior. She vocally protests the entire fucking trial, and they're all convicted for false prosecution of over 750,000 people.
Jesus.
And they're cumulatively responsible for the deaths of over 34,000 people.
Fuck.
Madame Mao is prosecuted and imprisoned for life. I believe the other guy has been very recently released, but she committed suicide in 1991.
Gotcha.
Woo!
Quite the ending.
And so it is estimated that anywhere from 500,000 to 2 million people lost their lives during the Cultural Revolution. So add that on top of the whole famine thing, a lot of people died. So really, really quick though, and this is super important, it's a misunderstanding. A lot of people think that all those deaths are from the Red Guards, which statistically a very small amount is from the Red Guards. A large amount is from the Chinese government imprisoning people and putting people in work camps and stuff like that.
Right.
So that's why it's really difficult to estimate how many human lives were lost, because that requires their accurate record keeping. That's not gonna fucking happen.
Our records? Oh no, we don't do that here.
They start pushing it off of their desk like a cat. They're like, I don't know what you're talking
what
about.
What records?
And they're like, this entire office is fucking covered in paper. And they're like, what do you say?
I've never heard of paper.
God damn.
Can't wait for this to be banned in China.
Let's see. People were compensated and rehabilitated for what they'd lost during the revolution, albeit very, very minimally.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Party newspapers considered it a major blunder and were incredibly open about its failures. However, that policy stopped in the 1980s, and now discussing the horrors of the Cultural Revolution is taboo. They just don't talk about it. It's not in the history books.
Didn't happen.
President Xi Jinping has said about criticizing Mao, to lose banner of Mao Zedong would mean a negation of the party's glorious history. So basically, you're not allowed to criticize Mao anymore. So I previously talked about the man whose father was pointlessly killed by the Red Guards. He received about $5,000 for his father's death. No apology. They just blamed it on the Red Guards. He's never been told why his father has been taken out of the house and killed.
5,000 big ones for the death of your father.
That's not enough. Not enough.
Not enough.
So Wild Swans, I've quoted Wild Swans so many times. It is translated into Chinese and banned in China. She has stated in interviews that many students look positively upon the Cultural Revolution because the government is not forthcoming with their mistakes.
Yeah.
Chinese culture has been irreversibly damaged due to the destruction of irreplaceable cultural artifacts. I have literally no positive news. I think I sent you a video earlier this week about the current state of Chinese culture. Did you guys have any chance to see it? No.
No.
That's a no. Honestly, I'll just summarize it in the Chinese government had sponsored a presentation of Chinese culture for, I think, Norway or something like that.
Huh.
And it is fucking embarrassing.
Oof.
Because it's very clear that the Chinese government doesn't have people that know Chinese culture anymore. Like, it looks like they picked up a few volunteers, poorly trained some guy to do 3 karate moves. It's bad. And it's honestly really depressing. I'll cite it too. If you look up China Uncensored, Chinese culture, it should be one of the first videos that's on there. And it's just really embarrassing, and it's really sad because it means that, like, the Chinese government sponsored an event endorsing Chinese culture, and they don't know what Chinese culture is because it's been erased effectively. There's been obviously some Chinese culture that was smuggled out, that people have passed down, orally, but it's been irreversibly damaged.
Right. God, that's awful.
Which is really fucked up. So the part that keeps me up at night, and this has less to do with, like, specifically, like, China and Chinese events. Like, obviously the loss of cultural artifacts really fucks me up, especially with the burning of primary textbooks and everything. But I think the most horrifying aspect of this has more to do with human behavior. So the outrage culture propagated by the Red Guard was based solely upon finding and targeting class enemies. And, obviously over time, there's going to be fewer and fewer enemies, so they just continually moved the goalposts.
Right, of course.
So that, it went from, like, oh, you had a connection before the revolution that, you can't change. Well, we're going to put you on trial to, okay, you have a book that isn't by Mao. Okay, well, now you're going to be beaten in public, right? The moving of these goalposts, because you needed to constantly be finding new people that were hiding. And I see this a lot in our current political rhetoric. Like, again, let's be realistic. Historically speaking, bigoted ideas are at, like, an all-time low in the U.S. Like, if I gave you a pair of dice and said, roll the dice and you could be born in any other decade in the past 100 years, I wouldn't take that.
Yeah, no way.
Now,
Absolutely
I am
not.
so unbelievably lucky to be born in this current decade.
Sure.
Like, I can vote. The fact that I can fucking vote is something that if I rolled the dice, there's an opportunity I will lose that, right?
Yeah.
Which is insane, right? So I feel like, race relations and gender relations are still not super fucking great.
No, not
like,
awesome.
There's so
Not
much
awesome.
we need to work on. But I think we're in the same predicament where, just like the children of the revolution, people nowadays want to reach the same goals that their parents, their grandparents did, right? And you can't do that unless you start moving goalposts. Mm-hmm. So nowadays, a lot of people could be called a Nazi. Like, you could be called a Nazi for voting for Trump, which isn't necessarily true. Just
Could
like
be,
as an
but
example,
yeah.
right? It could be true, but that word is being thrown around a lot in order to persecute people. And again, it's in an effort. They got to move the goalpost. It seems like there's just as many bad people currently that believing the same bigoted things today as there were in 1912.
Right.
Which is probably not true. So the example that I have of this, because what I see is just this gradual honing in of the correct set of beliefs to have, is the Lacey Green situation, which I talk about just as much as I fucking talk about communist China,
She's not kidding, guys.
So just context. So Lacey Green was a feminist pundit who consistently advocated for the LGBT community. She was a champion of sex positivity. She had left the Mormon faith to do this. She wrote numerous articles on sexuality, feminism, atheism. She's like literally a champion of the left. Like, if I could think of a stereotypical, left-leaning person, I'd think Lacey Green, right? Like, I feel like we can all agree with that. Whether or not you believe in her, she is really a symbol of the left.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely not right.
Sorry. Going along with what I'm saying. So last year, it had to be like last summer, I believe, she had said to the public that basically she had created so much anxiety for herself, just constantly policing everything she said to be PC. She was afraid to speak online. She was afraid to engage with people. She said in an interview I watched that her life was being threatened by people because they would bring up stuff that she'd said maybe like half a decade before that she can't change and would threaten to kill her. You know, like, she had been really at the butt end of this constant moving of the goalpost. You know, no matter how hard she tried to be always correct, she slipped, and there was little forgiveness in her close little circle of people. So to help alleviate her anxiety to a degree, she announced that she wanted to open herself up to people who disagreed with her, maybe test her believies a bit. I think, honestly, it was mostly that she was afraid of keeping herself in that box where she wasn't allowed to talk to other people, right? And as you can imagine, that happens with Twitter most of the time. People didn't respond well. She was doxxed. Her family's name, number, credit card information was released.
Oh, shit.
Her articles that she had written over the past half a decade of being an activist were being unpublished.
Right.
She was called sexist, racist, transphobic, problematic, like everything you could possibly call her. Just because she said she wanted to talk to people that disagreed with her because she wanted to learn,
Right.
you know, to think differently. That is her punishment for questioning her rigid social system, right? Not maybe some forgiveness, maybe some questions. Her punishment for going, hey guys, like, maybe this is not the best way to do this, is to literally have her work removed from the internet and have her life threatened, which is a pretty high stakes environment.
Sure,
right?
yeah. No, and I remember when all this sort of went down, and Lacey Green was absolutely, like, just, especially for, like, sex education and stuff, was just a huge deal for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I remember that a lot of the arguments against what she did had to do with her sort of aligning herself with, like, the red pill kind of YouTubers and whatever.
Yeah.
In a way, turning her back on people of color and LGBT community, you know?
Right.
Which is sort of fair. But for her punishment for that to be, you get removed from the internet and you are no longer allowed to sit at the cool table of progressive thinkers,
Yeah.
is rough. It's high stakes.
Yeah, also something I remember very vividly is I felt so bad for her because when she was super duper alt left, you know, the people on the right would bully her, they would make fun of her content, and as soon as she's like, you know what, hey guys, why don't we marry both sides? Like, let's like open ourselves to other opinions. Like, as soon as she did that, so many of her friends that she'd known for years just like blocked her on Twitter, cut her off, demanded that her platform be taken away. And so then, like, the only people she had to really talk to were the people on the right. And so I'm like, she can't really fucking win. You know, if she leans one way or the other, neither side really wants to take her.
Right.
I don't really keep up with her because I don't go on Twitter that much. But
I don't know.
I feel like that situation, all that communicates is, you know, everyone and anyone is expendable.
Well,
Lacey Green. Sorry,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, like, you know, Lacey Green was really, really high up there on, like, the social justice hierarchy as far as, like, being an activist goes. And, like, if she was able to fall that far from grace, from just trying to hear other people out, I think that communicates a lot. And it's the same way on the other side, right? Like, that's just an example that I have.
Well, and it's tough because, like, her situation in particular, she wanted to talk to people who are, like, so far right, you know? Like, she was talking to people who were openly homophobic, openly transphobic, for the sake of creating a dialogue, bridging a gap of sorts, you know? Which is, I guess, okay. But when we're talking about people who think fundamentally that other groups of people just shouldn't exist / not have rights, the argument can be made that should these people even have a public voice, especially when a platform like Lacey Green's is so public.
Right.
And, like, all fair, the doxing and the address leaks and the credit card information stuff.
Yeah.
That's, like, make your argument and go.
Yeah. Yeah, if honestly, I think what's so concerning about at least my topic is, like, the big thing I learned is, like, at least is what's communicated in my topic is the group of the moderate, like, the voice of the moderate didn't matter.
Right.
In this event, right? So that's why I think it is so important to learn from history and realize, like, how quickly the vocal radical minority can escalate things. So I guess, like, the point of my story is, like, you know, you don't think it's going to escalate this far. I'm sure that the people in the Red Army did not think it was going to escalate to the degree where you were expected to beat someone to death if everybody else was, right? But
sure.
if you're aware of, you know, and I hope there is just not an innate human instinct to avoid getting attacked enough to do that, but I feel like to a degree our need to self-preserve is way stronger. Yeah, it's way stronger than we'd like to admit. I think what we've all learned is information is important.
Sure is.
Hopefully there's not an innate human instinct to resort to violence if it means preserving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not responsible for keeping you up at night.
We hope you can sleep tonight. I won't. Yeah. Sorry, pals.
Yeah, any closing remarks, anyone? I have no, like, I wish I could, I should have ended with, like, a fun, lighthearted fact. But,
Yeah. I mean,
I don't have one.
I think I mean that's the point of the podcast really is just to ruin dreams and hopes.
Yeah, let's just expose the darkest parts of humanity. That's our goal. I can't
tell you how often I just look at the internet and go, oh my god, it's happening. It's happening now.
We are China.
Oh, anyway.
Yeah. Well, guys.
All right, are we signing off? Do we have an official
it's been real.
Do we have an official sign off?
Have a good night. I'm not responsible for keeping you up at night. All right, see you folks.